Warcraft 3 is a game with such incredible unit classes. We have everything from high elves to necromancers. But there is one class of units that has always been overlooked. A class of units that wants to prove itself but never gets the opportunity. The working class. Cue up the Soviet music. Hi, I'm Amon, and I try beating the Warcraft 3 human campaign with only peasants. So let's establish the rules. The obvious one is that I can only make workers. I usually start the level with a bunch of units, so if that is the case, I have to throw them into the meat grinder right away. And I can also build any building I want, but I will try to refrain myself from building towers in the first couple of missions. I think these rules are as fair and reasonable as they can be. Oh, and I have to play on the hardest difficulty. I have faith in the working class. So, let the pain begin. By the way, the first mission is a no-build mission without any workers. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to miss out on all those wonderful war crimes I did with my hero on this level. But don't you worry, there is more to come.
Help! Help! I'm being repressed!
And we start the challenge with a pretty simple mission. I said simple, I didn't say easy. I said I wasn't gonna build towers in the first couple of missions, and Arthas took that to heart. And he started pounding on one of them. But soon he got fed up and he retired. He is a lazy prince and expects the lower classes to do all the work for him. To boost my worker production, I started making another town hall. Then the first enemy attack wave came, but Uther helped me with that one. My peasants can use their call to arms ability and turn themselves into militia who have a stronger and faster attack and more armor. But don't get me wrong, they still suck. It's like these guys were primarily made to collect resources or something. When I reached a nice number of workers, I turned them into militia and I started going for the objective, which is to kill the enemy hero. I was doing well, but all of a sudden my carriage turned into a pumpkin. The militia form only lasts 45 seconds, after which my guys become weak workers again, so I had to retreat. Then I decided to make a proxy town hall next to the enemy hero so I can take him out with my full duration militia. And boy, do these guys work quickly together. Once they made the proxy town hall, they got attacked by a huge enemy wave, but with the power of worker union, they managed to take them down. Then I baited the enemy hero's ultimate ability, and I actually managed to take him down with a surprisingly low number of militia. Never underestimate the power of workers. The next level is another no-build mission. This one features a princess that only likes princes and isn't interested in the working class.
It's been a while since a prince escorted me anywhere.
Yes, it has.
No one else available? Off I go then.
This mission starts us off with a solid number of workers, which is good because we are going to need them all. Oh, and as you can see here, the lazy prince and his princess completely lost control and turned on their own soldiers. What a terrible influence this vixen has on our prince. First I went for an additional town hall, but also an armory. Fun fact, the regular sword and armor upgrade are applied to militia as well. Not peasants though, only militia. And then the first attack wave came and it had the necromancer, and turns out that he could literally have his pick in peasant corpses on the ground to turn into skeletons. I barely managed to take the attack wave down, and it's only the first one. So I had to resort to desperate tactics if I was going to beat this one with workers only. I had to resort to cheese. After getting rid of that attack wave, I sent 10 workers to try and get past the enemy base. After this incursion, only 4 of my workers managed to get through to the other side, and they were chased by 2 ghouls who could easily kill them. So one of them decided to sacrifice himself to distract them. Goodbye, worker friend, you will always be remembered. Then the 3 guys who were left started building a town hall. Why, you ask? Remember how I smited the necromancer with 1 holy light when I did the no production challenge? Well, I was thinking about doing a similar thing here. So I trained a bunch of workers, transformed them into militia, and sent them after the boss. These worker assassins don't care about anything but their target. And he is so weak that literally 4 of them were enough to take him down.
You're the king? Well, I didn't vote for you.
Okay, so far it has been all fun and games, but now we're getting serious. This 30-minute defense mission starts with a bunch of my guys in the middle of a fight, so I try to take them away as soon as possible and finish them off with my workers. I'm also allowed to build towers now, but even with them, this is going to be pretty difficult. Also, the lazy prince turned his hammer on his men once more. In my first attempt, I tried making a quick second town hall, and then I started making barracks around 2 of the towers so that they are harder to reach by the enemy abominations in the first attack wave. And of course, they came from the other side.
They came from behind.
And I just can't cover all the entrances with my buildings, so on my second attempt I decided on a different approach. I decided not to build a second town hall, but instead I started making towers in the center of my base. And I built them next to each other so that the enemy has less surface area to hit the towers. And that worked like a charm. By the way, in order for the enemies to get even less surface area, I built barracks in front of the towers. Other than the town hall, barracks are buildings with the most health. And they're also pretty cheap, so it only makes sense to build those next to the towers. Even though my huge tower Killbox can obliterate anything that comes close to it, the problems are the enemy catapults, which attack from range. So I always have a dedicated group of militia who hunt them down. Throughout the level, my Killbox only kept getting bigger and bigger, and I just kept adding buildings to incredible proportions. You would think this is it and there is no way in hell I can lose anymore, but let me introduce you to His Highness, the Lich. Specifically his ultimate that can easily kill clumped up buildings. The enemies don't have a lot of surface area, but Mr. Lich is having a field day now. Thankfully, on my third reload, I managed to bait him with my militia, and then my towers quickly took him down. In case this never happened to you or you didn't know that, the secondary caravan objective that you are supposed to stop actually makes a whole new base at the end of its path, which then starts sending units after your base. But there was no way in hell I can send anybody out to deal with it, so I'm just gonna have to deal with the additional pressure. Towards the end, another Lich came and it took down a couple of my buildings, but I did manage to take it down eventually. I managed to build so many buildings, I was sure that there was no way I can lose when there were only 2 minutes left on the clock. But then 2 Liches came at the same time, and I really started having doubts about that. But thankfully, there were still a couple of buildings left at the end, and that was it. The huge undead army stopped with only workers.
We found a witch. May we burn her?
This entire city must be purged.
Yes, Arthas, it must be purged, but you won't be doing any of it. Leave it to the working class to do the purging. You can go chill in the meantime. Going into this mission, I was extremely afraid because this is basically a timed mission where I have to destroy buildings with workers. The enemy has a solid clearing speed, and I don't have any units, so my initial clearing speed will be literally 0. In fact, when I mustered a bunch of workers to get into the city, turns out their militia duration is barely enough to get to the first house. And when they turned back into regular workers, they got demolished by the infected citizens. And since the inside of the city is made with special tiles that don't allow you to build anything, I had to get creative. So I decided to spawn camp the enemy base. Once the enemy is contained to their base, I can clear the city, however slow it might be. So I put a bunch of towers on their base exit. And then this happened. The giant gate is scripted to bring people directly to my base, so my towers can't do anything. In fact, this aggroed defenders from inside the base, so I got flooded with enemies. So looks like I need a different strategy. So I took another look at the city itself. And turns out that there are rare tiles that do allow building a single tiled building. And thankfully the tower is such a building. So I built a tower on every single tile like that I came across. And at home I built towers right next to the enemy spawn point, so my base was permanently secured from attacks. You can see here how irregular these build tiles are. But in the north of the city, there is a nice little location behind some houses where you can build a couple of them. And turns out the enemy has no way of reaching those, and they are too dumb to destroy the house next to it. So I managed to trap and kill the vampire man and his escort several times on this spot. And this gave me enough time to build towers all over the city. And turns out I can target the buildings themselves with towers, and those actually make really short work of the pesky civilians inside. In fact, I managed to kill all the houses in the vicinity of my towers, and that got me most of the civilian kills necessary. The last couple of them were taken out by my brave workers, who usually need 5 years to take down a house and who then heroically baited the civilians to the nearest tower. I honestly didn't think this was gonna be possible, but I guess nothing is impossible for the power of the working class. So yeah, you can purge the entire city with towers and workers who are willing to do what needs to be done.
That's it. I'm dead. Ah!
The next mission is always a meme mission, and this challenge is no exception. I got with the lazy prince to the initial base and then he turned his hammer on his men.
You lied to your men and betrayed the mercenaries who fought for you.
So, get this. We have managed to get through 4 missions so far without destroying a single enemy building. Well, this changes today. I start the level with a damaged tower and turns out that tower is going to be one of the keys to me surviving. I get attacked almost immediately and that attack wave consists of 3 necromancers, which amounts to a huge number of skeletons. I told my tower to focus one of them and it did a solid job defending everything as well. Unfortunately, it died. But I managed to convert my workers into militia and they somehow managed to defend themselves with a huge number of casualties. And I had literally 30 seconds of peace before a gargoyle attack wave came after me. I only had 1 tower, but thankfully they are quite weak against buildings, so I managed to sacrifice a few workers repairing it until it managed to kill them all. After that, I managed to stabilize and make a few more towers next to each other, so every next attack wave was easy to deal with. The enemy lich on this level is level 5, so I can make heaps of towers without any worries. Next, I made a proxy town hall with a couple of towers next to it, and I baited enemy defenders from the base to get to the towers for a swift execution. Then I made a bunch of militia and I started ransacking the enemy base. Since my town hall was quite close, I managed to take it out relatively quickly with my militia. And now I had another base with another gold mine at my disposal, so it was time to end the level. I made a bunch of workers and I sent them right in front of the enemy main base, and I made a town hall there. I was also about to build some towers, but the enemy saw me and I only had militia available, but they were enough to defend me. Then I made a bunch more towers, and again I started baiting the base defenders into them whenever I could. I knew I couldn't lose now, I just wondered how long it would take me to actually win. Turns out, very long.
2 hours later.
My militia deals so little damage that I needed 20 minutes to win from here. The enemy workers just kept repairing and rebuilding stuff and I literally had to play whack-a-mole with them building buildings and me trying to tear them down. Plus, the enemy has a bunch of towers, which also makes things a whole lot harder for me. But once I got rid of the necromancer building and the slaughterhouse, the rest of the level was an easy cleanup. And now to see if workers are going to be enough to kill a vampire lord. By the way, in the meantime there is a no build mission, but there are no workers on it, so we're skipping this one. Just like we skipped fighting to the last boat with my mortar bros.
A horse kicked me once. It hurt.
And here we go. The final mission, and let me tell you, this one is a real banger. First of all, you might know that this level starts with 2 huge attack waves at your door, which start attacking after about a minute. I was certain that there is no way in hell I can beat those without using my starting units, but I tried it anyway. Since I started with a few towers and the enemies come from the top and right, I decided to block these paths with buildings. And what happened next was probably the luckiest thing that ever happened to me in any challenge run ever. The enemies refused to attack me. And that's probably because they couldn't reach me. I'll use the map cheats to show you. For instance, this abomination on the right just decided to leave his friends behind. Or even better, the whole top attack wave decided to go right. But on their way they found a golem camp, which isn't really a neutral camp, but they have their own team for some reason, so they started attacking each other. Which not only severely weakened the attackers, but also cleared my expansion. Wow, was this an exciting start. By the way, the lazy prince and his sidekick were too lazy to move yet, but not lazy enough to start killing their own men. And that's a good thing, because the attack waves are a bit weaker and the vampire man doesn't join them until Frostmourne is claimed. I can't win without claiming it, but I can still delay it for a bit. I use my momentum to build another tower Killbox in my base that can take out purple attack waves that come from the bottom, and then I took possession of the cleared camp. I defended it with a couple of towers and it was time to go top. The enemy has a small outpost there where they mine gold and they have 0 defenders inside it, so I easily took it down. After that, I put a bunch of towers at the enemy base entrance, so any incoming attack wave will be completely obliterated. At least that's what I thought. But then a huge wave of enemies came crashing on my tower, and turns out I placed them too close to the enemy main base, and that aggroed their defenders, so they destroyed everything, and I even had to kill the remaining 4 meat wagons with my workers. So I placed my towers again, a tiny little bit further away. And now it's time for the worst, offensive part of the mission. The enemy has 2 bases here, a huge green base and a smaller purple base. And that smaller one is what I went for first. I first made a few towers next to the base and a town hall to make fresh militia right behind it. And that worked for destroying the first couple of buildings. But the deeper I went into the base, the more powerful it became. The enemy towers just kept pounding at me, and the enemy has an infinite supply of acolytes for repairs. So unless I was able to destroy the building and kill the acolytes trying to repair them, I just kept sending the poor workers to their deaths. But then I remembered that this isn't StarCraft, and that you can build on creep in this game. So I started building towers inside the enemy base. I had to defend them for a bit, but once they were fully upgraded, they took care of any enemy unit the base threw at me. Then cleaning up the base was easy. I first went for the crypt and then the necropolis, and that was basically it. And now I had a new expansion, which makes this my 4th one. Honestly, I felt like nothing can stop me anymore. I could not have been more wrong. First, I made a town hall and 2 rows of towers in front of it. Turns out the last tower was a bit too close to the enemy ziggurat, so they ended up fighting each other, and the enemy defenders promptly responded and destroyed literally every single tower, and it wasn't even close. Next time I placed the towers a bit further away and I tried again. And while they were being upgraded, I used my lazy prince and his sidekick to get to the end of their no build section and claim Frostmourne. Turns out the enemy hero has an infinite amount of resurrection stones in his inventory, so I can't start attacking the base until he can be killed, and that will happen after I take the sword. After claiming the sword, the lazy prince turned his new sword on the only remaining soldier on the level. In the meantime, my huge tower wave managed to defeat the enemy defenders that were attacking it, so I used this opportunity to take out the enemy crypt with my militia wave. I also tried to make a bunch of towers in the enemy base, but I got shot down pretty hard by the enemy frostworm that freezes my towers and prevents them from attacking. So my next desperate plan was to push with towers. So I made a bunch of towers a bit further away from my initial tower wave. Then my militia wave destroyed the enemy necromancer building, but the enemy rebuilds it at the top of the base. But they also destroyed the enemy boneyard, which they don't rebuild, so it's good night frostworms. I genuinely thought that this was it, and there is no way the enemy can take me out after taking these buildings down. So I made a few attacks with a couple of militia groups, and I got crushed. The enemy is still too strong, and their hero has a super powerful AoE spell that can basically one-shot any worker it touches. After that, an idea struck me. I tried making cannon towers next to the enemy buildings. The towers outrange ziggurats and deal siege damage, so they will take the buildings down in no time. And that worked like a charm for a couple of the buildings, and the new opening allowed me to destroy the enemy slaughterhouse. Then I tried rushing for the enemy crypt several times, but the pressure on the other side of the enemy base was still too strong. So I made some towers in the middle and a new town hall closer to the enemy. In the meantime, 3 of my gold mines were gone, and I was starting to get low on cash with just 1 gold mine sustaining me. The cannon tower approach did well, so I made 3 more towers further north, and those were enough to bombard the enemy graveyard. After that, I managed to muster a huge group of militia, and we managed to destroy the last enemy crypt. And when I started going for the last slaughterhouse, I realized that every ziggurat I destroyed was built again in the north, and I got slaughtered. Those were 6 ziggurats in one place. The enemy literally copied my Killbox strategy. In my last attempt, I managed to muster enough militia to get through the tower and destroy the slaughterhouse and even the enemy citadel, so they can only build necromancers and their hero now. However, I was almost broke, and things looked really dire. So dire in fact, that I set my sights on the enemy gold mine at the top of the base, because I thought I was gonna have to mine from it to win. I even made cannon towers near the gold mine to take it down. Thankfully, it didn't come to that, and I managed to muster a few more militia, they baited the enemy hero to the already built towers, and they took everything else down. But wow, what a mission. I did not expect I would be needing 4 gold mines to bust the last base, but it was definitely a 10 out of 10 experience. And yeah, in case you doubted my workers, don't. They managed to single-handedly beat every single build level in the human campaign, and on the hardest difficulty. I personally didn't think I would be saying this, but we actually managed to do it. Next up is the Undead campaign, with the builders who can turn into militia and who have to build on creep. I'm sure nothing can go wrong with that. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, I read all of them and appreciate any love you send my way. And I guess I'll see you in the Undead campaign. Peace!